Hey, how's it going? How are you guys?
Congratulations, married man. How's it
Oh
going?
yeah,
Congratulations to Margot.
yeah. Thank you. I'll pass it along to her. That's we're actually going. Our wedding is kind of divided up into three phases. The main one, the actual ceremony, was in Nashville last weekend. But for the California people, we did a thing out in California, kind of an engagement party a couple months ago, and then we're actually going to Prague next weekend. That's where my entire mom's side of the family is. So we're just going to fly out there really quickly and be able to spend some more time. So it's kind of like this little wedding tour right now.
You know, I thought when I knew you were getting married that you'd take a little time off, but you're cranking out story after story. And with this Steve Wilkes crash course on the 49ers defense and the history behind it is so fascinating because it goes back to Kyle's dad, Mike Shanahan, and when he came to the 49ers in 92, 93, you know, after being a head coach with the Raiders and going back to Denver as an OC and all that, and how Kyle goes back to his days of a youth when his dad left the family and went out and studied Bill Walsh's offense. Mike Holmgren was the OC before, and that's kind of what he wants Steve Wilkes to do. You had a sit-down with Kyle last week at the Dwight Clark event, and the read is just fascinating, David. So I've given a little bit of the Cliff Notes. Give us the details on what Kyle wanted Steve Wilkes to do with his defense.
Well, first off, Bill Walsh really revolutionized the NFL. I don't know how many teams do this, but I know the 49ers were the first under Bill Walsh to videotape everything that happened in the building. So every single meeting, even if Bill wasn't in on it, every single meeting was videotaped. And what that did is allowed for the 49ers to build this system, and Walsh would be able to give outgoing assistants a ton of material so they could go succeed at their head coaching jobs, but it would also allow incoming assistants the ability to play quick catch up and assimilate to the system. So I found out the other day that Kyle Shanahan has also videotaped every single one of the 49ers coaching meetings in 6.5 years at the helm. And this has come in really handy in the case of Steve Wilkes because, I mean, this is obviously an established defensive coordinator, respected mind. And what Kyle Shanahan wanted was to add and incorporate this mind, but also maintain the structure of his defense. He didn't want Wilkes to come in with his own staff. He wanted to keep Chris Kasarik there. He wanted to keep Johnny Holland there. He wanted to keep Daniel Bullocks there. So the way they did that is he said, hey, show up over here a few months before your family. Fly out now. I know it's going to take your family a few months to move out here. It's a big move. Use the extra time to watch anything that you need. And I have 6.5 years of footage and learn how we operate. And I think that Wilkes started the process before he signed on just to be sure that what the 49ers were doing was congruent with what he wanted to do. And he said, okay, I love this. Let's go. Signed on, and he spent the last 3 months in this crash course, which is the same exact thing that Mike Shanahan did in 1992 when he was fired by Denver. That was obviously the Seifert 49ers, but the George Seifert 49ers also videotaped everything because Seifert was a Bill Walsh disciple. And the results ended up really good, right, with Mike Shanahan taking over for Mike Holmgren. The 49ers even improved their offense. And that's the goal here with Steve Wilkes. Number one, defense. How can they make it a little bit better by, really integrating this experienced coach with what's already working?
Our pal David Lombardi's doing us Pop and Lund here on the Sports Leader. It's a great piece that you need to check out in The Athletic Inside Steve Wilkes' crash course in the 49ers defense and the history behind it. And as you explained, Mike Shanahan talked to different players and Joe Montana and Steve Young and interviewing all these different guys. But every coordinator is going to be a little bit different. So obviously from Saleh to Ryans to Wilkes. So even though Kyle wants it obviously to have consistency to everything, how will a defense under Steve Wilkes, you think, be different?
Well, they're going to blitz a little bit more. Steve Wilkes, he's known as a blitzer. He's known that to be aggressive. Just to toss out a number for you, the 49ers blitzed 21% of the time last year. That was number 20 in the NFL. That was up from the bottom of the NFL under Robert Saleh. Saleh doesn't like the blitz at all. The Jets last year were dead last, number 32. I think like a 12% blitz rate, which is really low. So DeMeco Ryans started to blitz a little bit more, but Steve Wilkes, last time he was coordinator with the Browns in 2019, or an NFL coordinator with the Browns, he blitzed 38% of the time. Remember, 21% for the 49ers. That's a big jump up. That 38% was number 5 in the league. The personnel is going to be different, but based on the conversation with Steve Wilkes, he really loves the athleticism that the 49ers have at linebacker, and he also trusts their defensive backs, and for good reason. I mean, this was the number one defense last year because they were strong on all three levels. But he figures that especially that athleticism at linebacker, which gives him flexibility because they can cover so well, he thinks that can, unlock some blitzing opportunities. You either bring one of the linebackers down on a surprise attack, or Isaiah Oliver, the new nickelback who Wilkes recommended to the 49ers because he coached against him, and then FC South. Oliver played for the Falcons. Isaiah Oliver is a good blitzer, so he can run those nickel blitzes. He can run the linebacker blitzes. Hell, maybe even a couple corner blitzes. I just think that there's going to be a little bit more diversity on that front. As far as man versus zone coverage, maybe a little bit more man coverage. That's been a gradual thing for the 49ers. Remember, Saleh was cover 3 zone, Pete Carroll disciple. Ryans, I think, diversified the defense. They evolved over time. You can probably expect a little bit more of an evolution in that regard to continue under Steve Wilkes.
It's interesting. From Saleh to Ryans, he stayed in-house, and this time he goes outside, and he brings in fresh thoughts and a different philosophy to some degree with the same basic structure. But he's the first former head coach that Kyle's had on his staff here. This guy was a one and done in Arizona with Josh Rosen in 2018. They only won 3 games that year, with 2 were against the 49ers. So obviously Kyle's going to give him a little more, say in the structure of the defense and put his wrinkle on it. But overall, you mentioned Isaiah Oliver, the draft pick, the safety they took 87 overall, Jair Brown, others, bringing in Sam Darnold, coaching him last year as the interim in Carolina. Because he was a former head coach in the NFL, David, do you think Kyle looks at him a little bit differently than just my DC?
I think, now that I think about that, it was remarkable early on how much trust Kyle Shanahan had in somebody like Robert Saleh, who was a first-time defensive coordinator in 2017, took a lot of heat through that 2018 season. Shanahan stuck with him. Obviously, had a lot of faith in DeMeco Ryans, who rapidly rose up the coaching ranks, went from co-linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. So, I already feel that Shanahan did previously give his defensive coordinators a lot of autonomy. Obviously, with Steve Wilkes having the pedigree that he has, maybe there'll be a little bit more. But I do think that it should be, emphasized that Shanahan has been hands off with this defense. He's trusted the guys under him. He's focused on offense. Obviously, he's trying to consider the big picture at all times, but he hasn't butted in. And I think that, obviously you can expect more of the same. But my main point is that there already has been autonomy in the building.
David Lombardi's joining us. In terms of just watching these guys when they're just running around in shorts and so forth, can you draw any, I'm not saying conclusions, but can you learn anything from these guys just running around in shorts, in shells?
Not really. I learned most from just seeing the guys, meeting them, shaking hands when they walk in to the media room to do their interviews. So one thing I know is Jack Coletto, Matt Barrows is a great article today about, they call him the jackhammer at Oregon State, played 6 different positions there. When we met him, and he's potentially going to be Kyle Juszczyk's successor at fullback, but I think they're looking at him for a more diversified role. Special teams is what they really love him for. But I think he probably has to put on at least 10 pounds. You finally meet the guy in person, you're like, oh, this guy a quarterback? What position does he play? Because I didn't recognize him by face. You only see these guys on tape with their helmets on, and they said, oh, this is Jack Coletto. I'm like, oh, okay. Probably going to have to bulk up a little bit, but that's all expected because the NFL weight room does stuff to guys, right? You get bigger, you get ready to play at that next level, and that process begins right now for all these rookies. Jair Brown, you want to talk about first impressions from these rookies? Jair Brown, I think, blew everyone away in the room when we were interviewing him, and that happened to be the same effect that he had on the 49ers scouts and front office personnel and coaches when he came on his 30 visit with the team. I mean, this guy just exudes that aura that you're looking for. It's hard to describe it, but he's in charge. He's magnetic. He's confident. And, everybody at Penn State said the same thing about him. So that's probably the media interview that I remember most from last week is Jair Brown, just because he stuck out to everybody in such a good way.
Yeah, the guys were in last Friday for a rookie camp, and because they've all graduated, they're able to hang around. And this coming Monday is going to be the evolution of the offseason and the OTAs, David, into Phase 3, where they actually get on the field more. I think at least one day of the week it's open to the media. And you want to see everybody. I think we're going to have a good turnout for Phase 3 of the OTAs. McCaffrey's been there for all of them, so I assume we'll be here as well. But this is the first time we're going to get a look at Trey Lance, the rework mechanics, whatever he's done in the offseason against Sam Darnold as a thrower of the football and one of the 49er offense starting on Monday, David.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what the delivery from Trey Lance looks like, and if he can, maintain whatever changes and improvement he's made into 11-on-11 action. Obviously, it's not going to be as intense as fully padded action. It's going to happen in training camp or game action, which won't come until the preseason, but it's going to be the first step, right? There's a checklist. You work on stuff in the lab, and the lab has been with Jeff Christensen, the quarterback's coach, who actually was Jimmy Garoppolo's first quarterback's coach. Christensen really specializes in tightening up releases, working on a quarterback's base so that he can deliver a quicker release with the upper body. So it's fascinating that Lance, who had that elongated release, whose base really wasn't where the 49ers wanted it to be. It's fascinating that he's been working with Jeff Christensen in particular, but the checklist starts with being able to take the work that he's accomplished in the lab and being able to port it to the playing field in actual game competition. And step one is doing that on an OTA field and an 11-on-11 work, which is not going to be padded. Guys are going to be running around in shorts. Obviously, you can't touch the quarterback. Step two is going to be doing it in pads in training camp where you still can't touch the quarterback. And then if Lance can check both of those boxes, it's going to be a challenge to make sure he doesn't revert to old habits on the training camp field. But I'll tell you what, if he's throwing the ball well here during OTAs, I think Kyle Shanahan's going to be really excited. Because you think about it, the 49ers, there just hasn't been enough of a sample on Trey Lance yet. He's still this gigantic unknown. And he was when he was drafted, and the 49ers were intrigued enough to spend all that capital on him. So if he starts to show some of that mechanical improvement, which is the ticket for him, because I think he's a smart guy, I think he's an athletic guy, it's the mechanics that have to bridge the gap. If he shows that during OTAs, I think that 49ers coaching staff will be pretty darn excited moving into summer.
Plus, maybe we'll see a little of it. He's going to throw at tight end U along with Josh Allen, right?
Yeah. He was supposed to be there last year, but something happened. Some kind of scheduling conflict happened. So Josh Allen was there. I went to tight end U last offseason. It was cool.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. Josh Allen was there. Zach Wilson was there. And C.J. Beathard, blast from the past, was there because C.J. Beathard he's from Nashville, so he was just there. George Kittle called him up, said, come on down. And so we saw CJ, but we didn't see Trey Lance.
Great stuff, man. Great piece on Steve Wilkes. I did check out Matt's piece as well. You guys are always doing a great job at The Athletic covering the Niners. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon.